Okay, yeah, that's true. So I can't move on then. So we need one more thing. That was meant to be the lesson. Anyone? What does Futuwwa mean? Remember?
Chivalry?
So that's the translation that's given to it. Chivalry in the Western context usually connotates probably a subset of what we really mean by Futuwwa. And the explanation of what Futuwwa is actually the entire book. So what we're going to read, what's forthcoming, like this Futuwwa. Does anyone remember? Let's see. An example that was given of a person who was known for Futuwwa. Easy. Qari Sahib. Do you remember a personality that was mentioned?
Imam Sahabuddin Suhrawardi.
The prime example that was given in that introduction was of which prophet? Khalilullah, Ibrahim alayhi salam. So anyway, now that introduction I went through last time was actually the introduction of the translator of that particular copy I had of it. Yeah. And now I'll describe of sorts the introduction that the actual author, Imam al-Sulami, writes, at the start of his book. As always, it starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And he says, praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the one who opened up the path of Futuwwa. Yeah, so it's come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you come to understand why that is. Which leads to the most beautiful form of fulfillments of duties to him. And he is the one who has cleared this path from error and evil and raised it to the highest of levels. So I mentioned last time as well that Futuwwa is in implementing the Sunnah in its most perfect form. The Sunnah is perfect, but when we implement it, it's always defective. We make it defective. Our implementation is defective. So Futuwwa is the expression which we are looking to achieve, of Futuwwa. I just remembered, so is shooting a bow and arrow, is that Futuwwa? Rather, shooting an arrow from a bow. Futuwwa. No. Is wrestling Futuwwa? What do you think? A form. Okay, you think it's a form? Anyone else? Anyone have any objections? I'm going to be objecting. The objection I have is, I'll give you an example, right? There are mixed martial arts clubs, around everywhere these days because of the popularity of UFC. You go in there and they do BJJ, they do grappling, wrestling arts, and a few other, martial arts. I've found many of them are probably the exemplars of arrogance. So if that was Futuwwa, then I'm confused. You see what I mean? So what I mentioned last time was there's a distinction between what actually Futuwwa is and some of the practices. So if you remember, I said Imam al-Sulami was one of the original pioneers of codifying what Futuwwa is. He doesn't mention anywhere, jump on the back of a horse, ride it around, get a ball, shoot a target. It's not mentioned in there. However, many years later, Imam Sahabuddin Suhrawardi was enlisted by a ruler, Nasiruddin-illah, they call it. Some places I've read it says Nasiruddin. Anyway, he enlisted Imam Shahabuddin Suhrawardi to codify Futuwwa for the princes and the emirs and the commanders. And as part of that, there were exercises which involved military exercises, which were wrestling, horse riding, and various other things. Now, naturally, what happens when you play a sport, like a team sport? What happens? You build a bond with your fellow team members. Yeah. So it wasn't sport; it was what was happening as a result of it, and that result only occurred because of the guidance of Imam Shahabuddin Suhrawardi. If that guidance wasn't there, they might have just ended up arrogant like the modern day, martial artists in the MMA clubs. So the actual Futuwwa that we're talking about is the guidance that the Imams are given from the Sunnah. It's not doing a sport. Right. So then the Imam says, the prophets and the chosen ones got on this path, and those who Allah guided to truth. And all those who were righteous, they learned to follow this path and attained noble levels in doing so. So then he brings a list of personalities who were the followers of him. So who do you think was the first follower of Futuwwa ever? It is as obvious as you think. First ever person. Who was the first ever prophet? Adam alayhi salam. Then was his son. When what happened? Qabil, he renounced Futuwwa, the Imam says. How did he renounce it? He disobeyed his father, he disobeyed the divine commandments, and he started to get evil thoughts, and then eventually killed his brother. But before that, when all that disobedience was happening, Adam alayhi salam's other son, Habil alayhi salam, he held it. So he says the second person to uphold it was Habil alayhi salam. Then came the Prophet Sheikh alayhi salam, who he says gave it its proper due and protected it from anything by it, and was saved from the traps of shaitan. He was made suffer due to his unyielding devotion to Futuwwa. So he had principles and he stuck by them no matter what. And therefore, by that, he became what? Illuminated. Now, do you know what happened in the time of Nuh alayhi salam? He warned people against worship of idols. Some scholars say that that idol worship actually came at the time of Nuh alayhi salam. That's when it started happening. So he would warn them against it. People, the qawm, they would ridicule him, but he would continue doing so, irrespective of the slanders that he was subject to. And the Quran says actually that Nuh alayhi salam, he stayed amongst his people for 950 years. For the entire duration he was doing this, and he was getting abused. But he kept on his struggle, irrespective of all the odds that were against him. And then the Imam mentions, I'm going to say this because it's in the translation and it's in the Arabic text I read as well, that Ad was named after Futuwwa, which protected him from pride. I didn't really understand that point because Ad was a tribe. So the way I understood it is that the good people from amongst the tribe is what's being referred to here. But amongst that tribe came a prophet. Who was that? Hud alayhi salam. And then he says at number 7, Hud was showed the beauty of loyalty to his people with Futuwwa. And then 8, Saleh alayhi salam, he saved himself from evil through its help. Then Ibrahim Khalilullah alayhi salam, he was a true and noble fatah, he said, a noble young man. And we all know his story. He broke the statues and the idols, etc. Number 10, Say through Ismail alayhi salam, through Futuwwa, Ismail alayhi salam, he was ready to be sacrificed. And then 11, he says, Lut, he reached the highest heaven from which there is no descent. Then Ishaq says, praise until the day of reckoning. And then Yaqub alayhi salam, he says, he held fast to the ideals of Futuwwa. And then